Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to my channel where I seek to provide Oracle-related content for your personal and professional development. And if you like content that I provide, please go ahead and like this video, or subscribe to the channel, and also enable notifications so you can stay informed of when we release new content. Our video today is going to be on upgrading an Oracle 11G release 2, so 11.204 to be precise, to 19C using the data pump. Now, and I know some of you might be asking, so why are we going to be using data pump? Now, there are a variety of tools and utilities that you can use to upgrade databases. Data pump is one of them. But the recommendation typically from my personal standpoint, I use data pump for databases that are not too large. Once you start getting into the terabyte sized databases, data pump typically would take a lot longer than the traditional database upgrade assistant, or maybe even transportable table spaces, or I know some people typically would use data guard, like a data guard configuration and then cut off. So today, the reason why I am choosing to do this example is because I do have an 11G database that is running on Oracle Linux 6. So let me go ahead and kind of draw a scenario for you here. So this is the current server that I have, and I'm just going to no-fill this. And then at the same time, let me call this server. Let's add some text into this. Let me draw and add some text into it. Let me put a text box in here, and I'll call this. It's running on Oracle Linux 6.10. Now, if you're familiar with Oracle 19C, certainly Oracle Linux 6.10 does not support the 19C binaries installation. So that typically would be the reason why I am choosing to do a data pump method of upgrade. So let's also draw in here. Let me find something that looks like a cylinder. That way it kind of represents our there's a cylinder right up here. So let's draw this here. So and I'll add text to it. And this would be the name of the database that I am going to be working with today is ORCL, and it is running on 11.2.0.4. So this is my current scenario. Now I want to make sure that I replicate this. Let me copy and then I paste and then I move over. Oh, I didn't do that well. So, all right. So this, copy all of them. And then I certainly would move those over. So what I'm trying to get to is I have a server, and if you've been writing with me on this channel, I have a server, Oracle Linux 7.9, and I want to certainly upgrade this database to version 19.3, which is the base version that I have. So because this server is a 6.10, is running on an operating system, Oracle Linux 6.10, and it's not able to support the Oracle 19C binaries, then I am faced with a scenario where I have to migrate that database out of that server if I have to run it, if I have to upgrade it up to 19C. So that is the purpose of my video today. I want to see how this works. So right now, I want to see how that works. So this is exactly what we are trying to achieve. So on my Oracle Linux 7.9 server, I will install I will configure a new database called ORCL on Oracle 19.3. And then what I would do later on would be to perform a logical export of all the data that I have in this particular Oracle database and import it into the newly created database. So that gives us a nutshell of what we are trying to do today. So if I go over to my server, let me clear all of this. Let me clear all of that. So And then I would clear all of this as well. So actually, let me exit and then come back in so that you see exactly what servers I am working with. Oracle, I'll log in as Oracle. So this Prim server, if I cut the contents of my Etsy Oracle release, fair enough, you see I am running on an Oracle Linux server 7.9. So this is the target server on which I want to end up with my ORCL database. Similarly, if I cut my Etsy Oracle release over here, I am currently running these databases on Oracle Linux Server 6.10. So that kind of ties in with that scenario I explained earlier. So let's go ahead and get started. So in here, if I cut my Etsy oradata file, if I cut my Etsy oradata, I do have an ORCL database here. So let's set my environment ORCL, and then so currently that database is up and running. So I have copied the statements that I'm going to be running in order to capture some information about this database on SQL Developer. Now, in one of my videos, I explained how to establish a basic connection to an Oracle database using SQL Developer. So I also want to make sure here that my listener is running as well, LSNRCTL status. So I have a listener that's running, and that listener supports ORCL as a service. All right, so let's go over to SQL Developer and let's try to capture some information. There are some things that you want to take into consideration as you plan for a database export or a migration. You want to make sure, first of all, that the character sets remain the same. So let's start pulling out information from our current database. So ORCL is running on 11.204. Let's look at what the character set is. This is AL16. So I'm going to copy this one here and put it up here just to capture that information. No, that shouldn't be where I put that. I should put it on this next line. Now, also, I want to make sure that I understand how file structure for this database. Where does it store its data files? So let's go ahead and look at this query. Select name from $data file. And fair enough, I see the data files are all stored in a certain location. U01 app, Oracle, oradata, ORCL. And then, of course, the data files are all going to be following after that. So, or maybe I should probably just copy all of these data files and put them here for comparison so that when we establish our new database, so with these two information captured already, in order to save time, I want to capture as much information that I need to start recreating the other database on the other server. That way, so that we save time. So I know the character set, I know the file structure. I would head on over to the new server, and I would start, creating that database so that as it creates, we would continue to gather information about our server. So let's first of all see what databases are in here. I have my PrimDB. You probably would be familiar with that if you are a regular on this channel. I would just source a 19C environment, and I would source it using any of the 19C databases. So PrimDB. Now I want to configure a database. I would which DBCA. It tells me DBCA is going to be running from the 19C home. So let's go ahead and configure that database. I would call up DBCA. And then when it comes up, I would, of course, set those parameters that I need for my database. So I would create a new database. I typically like using the advanced option. That way I get to make some choices. And one other thing that I would want us to also confirm from this side would be in terms of memory. So memory type. The reason this is important is it automatic memory management versus automatic shared memory management. So, and if this is in one of your environments, and most environments, of course, are mission critical, you want to make sure that the source database memory type it was using would be the same type of memory that you would use for the target database. So let's show parameter memory. So the reason I show parameter memory is if I have a value set for memory target like it is here, that means automatic memory management is in use. Now, if automatic shared memory management is in use, you would rather see parameters set for SGA and PGA expressly. So right here, it is set to 700. But the problem with 19C is 700, 19C will not support 700. So I would choose to go with the minimum that it gives me for the 19C database. So it's going to be a single instance database. ORCL would be the name I would choose to stick with. I would not create a container. I would use the file systems. Now remember, you know, file location and variables. Let's take a look at that. So this is the Oracle home. This is the Oracle base. I thought maybe we could see that from the template, but if I go back to the template, if you want to see the details on the template, let's view the details of that template. You would see here that the data files would be created, the Oracle base, which is use01 app Oracle, oradata, and then the DB unique name, which would be ORCL, and then of course the different tables, data files representing for the different table spaces. So if you look here, that is about the same format that our source database is having. So I would stick with that. So let's go ahead and close this. I would stick with that file system. And also here, because you have the names given as system 01, CSOC 01, it tells me that Oracle managed files is not in use. So I would choose to stick with what I see on the template. So let's go ahead and move forward. Of course, I would specify a flash recovery area and enable archiving. And let's give it a little bit. It's going to check FRA. It's going to look at the listener. Hopefully, I have a listener up and running on the 19C home. Okay, so I have a listener up and running. Listener is running on 1521. I would choose this particular listener right here to register my database with that. So let's go ahead. I'm not sure why it's freezing on me, but okay, there we go. All right, so I'm not going to configure any vault options. So because I mentioned automatic memory management, I'm going to stick with the default that it gives. In terms of sizing, for this is a 19C, I would at least go with at least 500 in terms of number of processes. Character sets, remember, this was on AL16. Typically, it defaults to AL32, which of course helps you, store information in multiple different language groups. So the national character set, of course, here is AL16. So this is what I am going to stick with. I'm not going to change any of that. Connection mode, sample schemas. I would not add any sample schemas. The original database has some sample schemas, and those are some of the schemas that we would test to see if everything that we chose to import on this other side. So let's go ahead and hit next. Management options, I would not configure Enterprise Manager Express. I would use Oracle as my default password for all the administrators. It says it's an easy password, no problem. I would go ahead and create that database. So after it gives us our summary, we are creating an ORCL database. And of course, the data files we saw from the template. So let's finish and get our database creation started. I'll just open up the details so that we see, we have an eye on what's going on at this time. Now, this might take a little bit. While that is going on, let's come back over to our source database and continue to gather information on our source database. All right. So in terms of table spaces, we just want to see what table spaces, because generally applications that use your database store information in table spaces. They have what we call I'm drawing a blank. So service accounts, and these service accounts are serviced using dedicated table spaces for those service accounts. So let's take a look at our table spaces here and see. We do have 6 table spaces here, and we would compare these 6 table spaces, of course, with what we get when we finish creating. I'm just going to, so if you're familiar with SQL Developer or SQL generally, if you dash, it comments out. So I'm looking at this as a comment. That way I don't inadvertently try to run something that I don't want to. Now, if we, after configuring our new database, we do find out that there are some table spaces that are here that are missing in the new table space, then of course we will make sure that we add them there. All right, and we will get that DDL for those table spaces by using this select statement, select DBMS metadata get DDL. So when it gets to that point, we would see. I have a feeling that at least the example table space is not going to be created on the new database because we are not adding the example schemas. All right, so if you're also familiar with data pump, you know the way the Oracle instance communicates with the physical is using what we call directory structures, right? So let's take a look and see what directory structures we have on our current database. So select star from DBA directories. We do have sub there, and there is a default data pump there that is always created by default for Oracle. Now, I mean, I could choose to put my exports in a separate location. I would create a different data file location for it. Now, if, for example, we say we want to create our directory data pump on file system, let's assume we want to put it on a directory called EU01, and we create an export directory. Let's just do that for the sake of learning, right? I would make sure I go over to my server. I will go over to my server and I would make that physical directory present on the server. I would create that directory U01 export. And then I would certainly create or replace a directory exp there as pointing to that physical location. So let's go ahead and create that. I mean, we are in a learning mode. So, so the exp there has been created in U01 export. I also want to make sure that I create this same directory in the new server so that I remain consistent with how I move things around. So I would go over to the new server as well. I would open up, there is a session here on primserve cd. I would clear that, and then I would make the U01 export on that, so that when we are done with the database installation, and then we can go back and certainly create a directory structure exp there pointing to that location. Okay, so let's keep going. Now, and this would be for validation after we perform the export. So let's take a look at our database users. Now, select star, of course, would give us write everything under the sun, but we have 39 users. Not all of them are open, right? We have expired, and logged, and all of that. And some of these users are Oracle maintained users. Now, if you are familiar with differences between 11G and 12C going forward, in the DBA users table, there is a column from Oracle database version 12 going up called Oracle maintained. And it goes, it takes one of two values, Y for no, Y for yes, N for no. So I am not interested in exporting schemas for Oracle maintained objects. Now, 19C is a higher version, And I would imagine that the metadata for 19C has a lot more enhancements than the metadata for 12C. So I would not want to replace the system or sys schema from the 11G 19C sys or system schema with that of 11G. So when I'm performing my export, I would, exclude those users, and I would show you guys how. But on 11G, like I was mentioning earlier, the easiest way we can see Oracle maintained users would be from our DBA registry. Unfortunately, that's the only way I can figure that out. So we have these users right here, and let me sort them out. So we have Apex, CTXCs, all of these guys that are Oracle maintained users. In my export, I would want to exclude these guys from them. So I'm just going to copy these users and bring them over, say maybe on an Excel sheet here. And then I would see what to do with them as I plan to write my export command. So, and there are also, of course, some other users. There are also some other schemas. Let's just copy this for the sake of clarity. I'll just put them here next to their corresponding primary users. So, so I would exclude these guys as much as I can from my export. Now, the other thing too is if you do have users that are in your current database that have 10G passwords, once we upgrade them, the 10G passwords would not be able to connect. And the way we can work around this is to add an entry in our SQL.net.ora file that would allow for 10G passwords. So the SQL.net allowed logon versions. If you don't have this entry in your SQL.net for your 19C database, then users with 10G passwords, unfortunately, will not be able to log on. And also, as part of validation, we would perform object counts. There is a nice query I found online that can help me really give the different users and the number of objects that each of these users has, and the sizes of the total size, of course, of that schema. So let's run that. And I usually just like sorting things out alphabetically. That way it's easy for me for comparison. Now, I really wouldn't care much about the size. I would copy this, of course, and put, of course, in my Excel sheet here. So let's do that. And then we see for comparison before, of course, and after. So what were the columns? Let me take a look at it. Owner and objects. So owner, objects, not objector, objects. Okay, so now, of course, I mentioned that there were some users that we are going to skip. So we would come and edit this list so that we are comparing apples to apples at the end. Let's take a look and see if our database is done. No, 46%. So I don't know what's going on, but I would tell the alert log. I'll copy this alert log, open up a new session here. Let's clear this. And then I would tell -f that alert log just to see if there is anything going on. So far, let me break out of this, actually cut the full contents of the alert log just to see. I don't see any errors. There may be a few warnings here and there, or there are errors here. So failed open file. So no, that is okay. Let's just tell our alert log and see if we are going to be running into some issues so that we know. I'll just leave that at the background there. All right. So we have this information here. Now, I would prepare for export right now. And in order to prepare for export, let's go over to our primary server, to our source database server. And remember that we decided to use a directory object pointing it to U01 export. So I would go to U01 export location and prepare a PAR file. Now, you could, it depends, it's personal preference, right? I like using PAR files, but I would do the export with the PAR file, and then of course I would do the export straight on the command line. So That way we can explore both methods. So on U01, let's seed in to U01 export. And then let's VI, because we want to create a file that we would use as a PAR file. So let's VI and let's call our PAR file full ORCL dot PAR. Now, there are some things that I would need on the PAR file. So first of all, what am I doing? I want to first of all point this PAR file to the directory object that I would be using. So our directory object here, remember we said was exp dir. So let's copy exp dir. And then I want to perform a full export of the database. My dump file, I would give it just a simple name. So full ORCL export exp.dmp. And then of course the log file, I would give it kind of the same name. So full ORCL exp.log. And because we are going now, in order to save time for the export, I would not gather any statistics on this export. So I would exclude equals statistics. And then secondly, I would exclude some schemas. Now, so let's agree on the schemas that we are going to exclude. So let's come back here, and we saw here that we had Oracle maintained schemas right here. So this list would be what I would want to exclude. So I would copy this list, and then maybe, I mean, if it might be a little bit, long and labor intensive, but I would want to copy this whole list first of all, and let's put this list, let's put it in a new file. And then I would copy this one as well, and I can exclude as many schemas as I want. So let's copy that and put in here as well. Flow files, let's take a look at that. There's going to be a lot of schemas to exclude, and if it takes a little bit of time, forgive me, but I don't want, I'm not going to exclude DBS and MP, that's the monitoring user. If you are using Enterprise Manager, you want to be careful with that one. DBS and MP and Sysman are those that you want to be careful with as well. So I would not exclude those. All right, so let's see here. So sys and system, of course, I want to exclude those. So this is system. Sys, of course, I want to exclude this. And I don't have Enterprise Manager configured for this current database. So I would leave Sysman there alone. So I would put ticks right here. Editing the document, might be what would take us some time. And we are buying time, of course, hoping that our database, it's stuck at 46%. I'm not sure what's going on. Let's see here. It is doing some work, so we'll just let it be. Hopefully by the time we are done preparing our PAR file and getting ready for upgrades, we should have some success on this completion. It normally shouldn't take this long. So let's go ahead and continue editing our file. This. So I would have to put them in, if I want to include them in my PAR file, I would have to put them in ticks. Sorry, I have to do this one here. Let's do, of course. This is the part that kind of takes, I should have done this before the video, but all right, so let's bring it all on one line. right, just carefully making sure, because of course, if we make mistakes, it is not going to end well for us. Mm-hmm. All right, let's take a look. Let's keep going here. I'm just going to minimize this here for a little bit that way. And I'll make it bigger, of course, when we finish. Let's go to the end and then bring up. Okay, so that's it. So let's take a look at our database, of course, and see what's going on with that. We might have a problem with our database here. So if by the time we are done finishing our power file and our database is not ready, I'll pause the video in the interest of time. That way, we make sure that we are not spending too much time on our video. So there we go. So now heading back, of course, to, so we would use exclude schema in. So we would exclude schemas in that. So let's copy the whole line, and then we, of course, we take it over to our dump file. So let's go down and let's go back out of here. And then we exclude schemas in that. So we are excluding all of these schemas in our export. Now, export there is a directory. We are performing a full export, a dump file, a log file. We are excluding statistics, and then we are excluding this schema. So it looks good to me at this point, and I would save it. So let's cut the contents of our full ORCL path, making sure that it is exactly what we want to look at. So EXP there. So let's take a look and see. We are at 60%. It's going a little slowly. Now, if you don't mind, I would pause the video and then just resume when we are at 100%. All right. So it looks like our database finally completed. So I'll close this. And then, of course, I would head back to and I would see OR.ORCL, ORCL, and then I should have a database running here. All right. So in order to make things easier for me in terms of running SQLs, I would go over to SQL Developer and establish a connection for that database on SQL Developer. So let me exit out of this, and then I do a TNS ping ORCL so that I see what I need in order to create that. So the host is primserve. So I want to get the IP rather, ping -C. I would send 3 packets for primserve, and the IP is 104. So let's take a look at that. Let me go over to SQL Developer. I would click on the green plus to create a basic connection. And this is my prim server ORCL, and I'm establishing a connection as the sys user. Sys, and each time you're connecting a sys into a database, you want to connect a sys DBA. Oracle will be the password. For the host name, I would put that IP address, and then for the service name, and if you look at our TNS ping, the service name is ORCL. So let's go ahead and do that. I would test that connection. It says success right here. I would save, click on save the password, save that connection, and then connect. All right, so let me open up, and this is it right here. Let me open up a window for it, and I would copy, let's see here. Let's copy some of this. I don't know if I'm going to need to use all of them, but I'm just going to copy all of them over here this way. So while I'm performing the checks here, let's go ahead and launch our export job. We already have, our PAR file, ls-l, our PAR file is ready, .orenv. We just want to make sure that we source the right environment. And then we are going to run our expdp command. And there is a string. I would export that. Okay, one of the things I wanted to mention is if you wanted to have more, as close to a read consistent image as possible, and this is general practice. If this is me doing a full database export in my environment, if there is a possibility, I would want to start up the database in a restricted mode. That way I limit users from coming in and performing DML. When you start up a database in restricted mode, all you're doing is preventing external users from logging into the database, but the administrative users would be able to log in. So let's shut down our database. Let's shut down immediate. And I will start up in the restricted mode. So let's start up restrict. Let's start up restrict. Okay. All right, let's exit out of this and then let's perform our export. So we are actually on that location. Let me clear this. EXPDP and EXPDP. And then I would use my connection string, EXPDP assist DBA, and then PAR file equals full ORCL.par. And then let's go ahead and hopefully we don't do any errors. Oh, we have an issue here. Let me fix this and then I would let you take a look at that PAR file here. VI into our full. Okay, I think there might need to be a space here. And let's rerun that and see if it works. Let's see here. All right, I'm gonna copy something that works. I'm going to copy something here that worked before, and I'm gonna change the directory. Oh, the error says there is no closing quote. All right, let's try this again one more time. Oh, I think I see here. Let's go over to the end. We needed to have a closing quote right here. And this is a little bit on the strict formatting side. So, okay, now it seems to be working. All right, good. So this is our data pump job, sys export full one. And now I like to see this. Once it gives me an estimate of the blocks, it means we should be going good here. So now let's take a look at SQL Developer, just making sure that our new instance compared to the old one, this is 19 right now. And let's look at the value for the character set. It's the same. Now, let's look at the structure here. Examine the data file structures. So if you take a close look, I see a difference here. The ORCL right here happens to be in caps, and we do not have the example data file, and we'll confirm that when we look at the example table space. So let's go back down. And again, if you're performing import exports, you certainly would want to pay attention to some of these type of details. Let's look at the table spaces. So we do not have the example table space as well. Now, remember I said if we don't have those, we would have to recreate them. But because my database is in the restricted mode, right now on this side, chances are I may not be able to get that DDL. Let's give it a try though. I may not be able to get that DDL. All right, yeah, so it's in the restricted mode right now. So we'll have to wait when I export finishes. And of course, it's a smaller database. Again, like I said, if you were in the terabytes of databases, this would be a problem. So let's go back in there and we shut down our database and start it up in an open mode. That way we are able to proceed. So remember it was restricted. So let's start it up normally. Okay, good. So I'm sure a SQL developer would be able to access the database at this time. So connection reestablished. So the metadata for the example table space, we would copy that and bring it over to our the new section here. And I would run this query. I would run this query to recreate. But one thing I would want to do, of course, is to make sure I would close it at this point, and then make sure that the database file structure follows exactly that of the new database. So up to this ORCL point. Up to that point right there. Okay. And let's try to create this table space example, data file that AUTOEXTEND, and let's make sure, let's see if that works. Okay, so the table space has been created. So right now, if we do run a select table space name from DBA table spaces, we have 6 like we had before. So that problem has been resolved. I'm not going to resize the data file. It's already on AUTOEXTEND, so I'm just going to clean this up. All right, so this, okay. So we are preparing for import. So we have to create this directory file structure. We don't have expdir on this system. There is no expdir. So we would create this directory structure, expdir. And then, of course, let's confirm if that has been created as well. So expdir U01 export. And remember, we had already created U01 export, CD U01 export. Let's clear this so that we see what we are doing. U01 export. So let's go back here and make sure that we finish up all the preps. Now, because we excluded those schemas that Oracle maintained with versions 12 and above, if we do select staff, let's select username, account, status, default, table space, password, versions, Oracle maintained from DBA underscore users, we should be able, hopefully I did not spell any column wrong. So you see password, Oracle maintained, yes. So let's segregate where Oracle maintained equals yes. So all these users that would come up with a yes are all Oracle maintained. And most of these users are those that we did not import from the from the source database. All right, so let's make sure we're not missing anything else. And then we would run our checks, of course, when our import finishes. Now, to prepare for import, I certainly would have to copy that dump file over ls-ltr. Actually, let's do an ls-ltrh so that we see here. Now, our dump file is about 82 megabytes. So let's SCP this over. Let's SCP our dump file full export.dump to the new server. And that new server, of course, is primserve. And our primserve IP address is this 56101. And then let's put this file in that location, U01 export. It's going to take a little bit. I'm sure this is the first time it is trying to do that. It's probably going to prompt us for a password here. And then once we provide that, we should get confirmation that it copies over. Okay, good. It's asking for the password. Oracle would be the password. All right, so it's moved it over. If you can see from here, it's moved it over. All right, so if we head over to our primserve server, PWD, this is our export location, ls-l. We have our full Oracle export, ls-ltrh, 82 megabytes. Let's compare with this one, 82 megabytes. So the totality of that dump file came over. So right now, we would perform our import IMPDP. Let me source my environment here first, just to make sure I'm pointing to the right database. And then, of course, I will run my EMPDP. Again, like I said, I could use the power file, but this is just a straightforward command. So I would import as sysdba. Let's go back here. Let's go up so that I see my connection string as sysdba, IMPDP as sysdba. And let me make sure that I exit out of this. That way I don't try to run another import. As sysdba. And then I would say full, let's do a directory equals exp dir. Full equals y, dump file equals what we brought over, and then the log file equals, let's do full ORCL import.log. All right, let's go ahead and do that. I'm surprised it's asking me as I'm running a sysdba, it's asking for a password. So let's put a password in here. And I hope our import might take a little longer though. So let's just watch it do. There's going to be a bunch of errors. Now, the tendency with data pumps is more than likely you would have for imports a lot of errors. Now, the question is, what errors are they? And is that something you should concern yourself about? So if you have errors on object already exists, and you understand that the dump that we had was about some objects that we imported. They're full. This is a full database export. So because these objects already exist, these are the XDB objects, and we did not export the XDBs, so we should be good on that one. So let's wait and see. OWBS does not exist. That's fine. It's one of those Oracle maintained. I am not going to bother too much about it. Now we're concerned a lot more about the schemas. Now, easy to call them application schemas. Sometimes it could just be users that do not have the privilege to create objects, which in Oracle lingo would be just users that have only read-only access. So it is now importing some things. So HSH is one of those users, those example schema users. So this is kind of really 55,500 rows. So it's going to take a little bit of time. So we wait. And of course, if you're going along with me, what I can do to make it a lot easier for you would be I would copy all of these SQLs that I'm using, and below this video, I would paste them there. That way you have a point of reference. I'm just going to start preparing that right now. Nope, that's not what I wanted to copy. Let me copy here, select all, copy, and I would paste them here. And certainly, get info for table spaces. I'll just leave the SQL statements there so that you let's take a look at, we're still importing. So and then of course, also export command. I would copy that from, and this is probably what getting towards the end of this one. So cat full par expdp, and then let's do assist dbn. Let's do that. You would create a power file and put all of this in there and then point your export to the power file. And then IMPDP would be the same, not export at this time, but IMPDP. Our command, of course, full equals Y and all of that good stuff. Oh, well, it finished up with 59 errors. Let me just copy this here for you guys. import command. All right. So now let's pass on to verification. Now, certainly, there are some things that you as a DBA would need to do after your import has completed. Some objects are no longer going to be valid. Statistics, we would have to gather them. But before we do that, I want us, first of all, to compare what we have that moved over. So remember, we had an Excel sheet that had objects. So this would be from our ORCL 11G. And then I would want us to compare with our ORCL 19C. ORCL 19C. And there are some objects that, again, like I mentioned, that we excluded from the import. So let's go ahead and copy. Let's take a look at that. Let's go here and select. We would run, this is the query that I want us to run to see the count of new objects on this side. So let's do that. I'm going to copy just these two columns. Let's copy those. Now let's paste them here. Okay. Let's just do that here. Okay. So what this might be a little, for some people who have a better method, you can use that. I'm just going to compare apples to apples here. So this one, for those that are not the same, I would use the brown BB analyst. Let's insert that object and move it down. If you have a faster method, you go ahead and use it. But BB analyst, we see that this was one of the schemas that we brought over or copied over. BI all copied over. We did not bring this guy over, and we did not bring this guy over, so I shouldn't even bother giving it a color. We're just looking at the stuff that we brought over. HR we brought over. Let's insert and then move down. And we moved down a little too much. So HR 3434. HR looks good. Justly IX, these are the ones we also brought over. Those look good. We did not do MDCs. We did not do MDCs, so I'm not going to worry about that one. This one we brought over. So, I mean, from a few checks, we're comparing apples and apples, and it looks like we brought some stuff over. OE, there might be a few that I think we were supposed to bring OE over. So that one I would mark as in dark brown. OLAPSIS, Oracle ACE, OCM, and this most of the ones that are remaining. Now, Scott is an example schema that we brought over. So that looks good. SH, we brought SH over. I think we should have brought SH over. Sysman and all of this stuff. So just looking at this, a few of those that we brought over. So I mean, I certainly at this point can say with maybe 90% certitude that our import was successful if I compare apples and apples to see that, the objects that were brought over are the same as the objects that were on the source database. So, I mean, at this point, you would certainly go ahead and perform some other things, maybe, try to gather statistics a little more on your databases. You can run the DBMS gather, compile, refresh statistics for fixed objects, recompile objects. and we can take a look and see if there was any objects that may be invalid, and recompile them as well. So I can take a look here and see, select star from DBA underscore objects where status equals invalid. And it is not uncommon to see post DBA objects. So that it is not uncommon to see some things that are not valid. And if that is the case, of course, you can head on to your database, your prim server, and then, of course, run the recompile at question mark stands for the Oracle home. There is the RDBMS folder, admin, and then you run the utlrp.sql script to recompile. And let's give that a few seconds, and then we check and see if it helped, recompile anything on this site. So currently we have 16 invalid objects. None of them belong to SYS, which is a good thing. I see OE. Let's take a look here and see something. OE was one of those that had invalid objects. So maybe if we recompile them, maybe this number might change, I'm guessing. But let's see here. So it finished. Let's see if that helped. Let's rerun that query. So all the objects are now valid. So let's take a look here and see. Out of curiosity, I just want to see here if OE changed. It's still 138. So that doesn't really make any difference. All right. So I think at this point, we can say, well, this is a method that we can use in order to kind of help with, moving our data over from a server, either that's being decommissioned or that can no longer support the next version of the Oracle software. And I hope this was informative for you. I know there are several variations to data pump. Go ahead and like the video if you found this useful. Subscribe to the channel, share with your friends if you think this is information that might be helpful to someone. Thank you for watching, and I certainly would see you in the next video.